Welcome to iCOM 495, Senior Capstone for the Digital Media Minor. I'm your instructor and director of the minor, Megan McNames. In this video, I want to introduce you to the creative project that you'll spend this entire semester working on. In the second video this week, I'm also going to discuss the thesis paper that you'll work on in this class as well. I'm discussing these projects in two separate videos just to make them a little, I think, easier to digest, but I do want to make it very clear that these two projects work together. They're not two completely separate projects. The research paper that you're going to conduct is going to help you to create the creative project. I'll discuss that more in the next video. In this video, I want to focus on the creative project. So in this class, you're going to create one of three project types to demonstrate your knowledge from the digital media minor. So you can create either a social network or organizational site with a specific goal, and by organizational I mean it's for an organization or a business. So if you are a PR, marketing, advertising student, you could create a site that advertises or markets a product or an organization or a nonprofit. If you're interested in going into social media, you can create a social network. If you took 210 and you enjoyed working on your social network in that class, you can bring it back into this class. Or you can create the second project type, a story-based multimedia nonfiction site that describes a large component, like a museum exhibit. This is for students who are interested in using multimedia to tell stories. This is a project type that will allow you to create videos, photos, podcasts, any type of media that are used in the service of telling a story that you're going to present in some kind of digital format. And finally, the third project type is an interactive case study examining a large-scale web product. So for those of you who are not necessarily interested in going on to become media creators, you might study a product that is important in your field in order to learn something about that product. So for this project, you're going to examine the usability of a big web product and present your findings in an interactive case study. Basically, you can make a website presenting what you found about the product you tested. A good example of this project type is if you were interested in working in radio, you might test a large web product like iHeartRadio or BBC's web radio player to understand how people use it and how those kinds of things are best designed. One thing I want to make very clear this week is that you need to use original content in these project types. Now, there may be some situations in which you are using content that is not original to you. For example, if you are making a story-based multimedia nonfiction site, you may use historical photos or you may use headshots of contributors or something like that that people send you. If you're creating a social network, you might ask your users to contribute media. If you're creating an organizational site, you might work with that organization to get some content they already have that you will then edit and resize or whatever you need to do to make it appropriate for a website. But for the most part, I'm expecting you to use original content and content that you have the rights to. So going out online and just grabbing stuff to throw into your projects is not going to work here. As you decide what kind of project type is right for you, think about that, because if your organizational site needs a logo, you're going to need to make a logo, or you're going to need to work with your organizational partner to get their logo and to format it correctly for the web. Now, the process we're going to use is the same one we used in 375, and you're going to demonstrate that process through these projects: individual and group meetings, presentations and responses to each other's presentations, and project usability reports. This is not the order you will give these to me in, but you can read more about these deliverables in the Creative Project Instructions handout. The biggest thing this week as you start their creative project is to remember that this entire creative project starts with a problem. Where do you see a problem that can be solved? Please take a look at the example under syllabus and instructions of a former student's project in this class. The problem he worked with was that undergraduate students often don't learn how to be good researchers. So when you're tasked with creating a research paper, it's very confusing, and you know, a lot of schools don't teach those skills very well, and millennials in particular seem to struggle with finding information online. So he started with a problem. Young people in college today struggle with finding information online that is trustworthy, that they can use in research papers, and understanding how to understand and use what they find. So where do you see a problem that can be solved? That's what you're going to start with this week. And then again, the process is the same as 375. Once you develop an idea of what your problem is this week, then you'll start researching, you'll create alternatives, prototypes, and you'll evaluate those prototypes. So this week, you need to turn in 2 things to begin your creative project. The first thing you need to do is tell me what educational goals you have that you need to meet. I unfortunately have not had all of you in class before. I have not had all of you in every class. And so you need to tell me what 200 level iCOM classes you took and what theories and skills you learned in each one. So I know what to expect from you in your project in this class. Again, this class is about demonstrating mastery of what you learned in the minor. So I need to know what you learned in the minor so I can tell if you're demonstrating mastery. The second thing you need to do this week is give me a project description. Write a 1-sentence description of the project you intend to create. You only have 1 sentence. If you cannot explain your project in 1 sentence, then you haven't developed a clear enough idea of what it is. You also need to tell me what the problem space is. What problem are you addressing with this project? And then I want you to give me a brief overview of the scope, audience, and outcome of the project. So by outcome, I mean, what will people learn or have done or be able to do once they experience what you made? If you make a multimedia presentation, you put it on a website, what are people going to get out of it? What is the outcome? If you create a site for a nonprofit, what is the outcome? Is the nonprofit going to make more money? Is the nonprofit going to get more volunteers? I need to know what you think the project is going to accomplish. Couple tips I just want to run through really quickly. Your problem, if it's really big, pare it down. World hunger is not a problem. It is thousands of problems that add up into what looks like a larger problem. But hunger in Muncie looks a lot different from hunger in DRC Congo. The causes of hunger in Muncie are a lot different from the causes of hunger in DRC Congo, right? Don't tell me you're going to solve world hunger, because I know that you aren't. And nobody has solved it yet. You're not ever going to solve it, but you can solve one of the thousands of problems that contributes to world hunger. So for example, if your problem is that people don't use all the great resources at libraries, focus that down to a specific audience, an instance of that problem. Changing it to something like Ball State students don't know how to use the services the BSU library offers. So people don't use all the great resources at libraries. Are you ever going to get all people to learn how to use a library? Probably not. In fact, I know you won't. But can you get Ball State students to know more about how to use their own library? That's much more achievable, and that's a better problem statement. Second, focus on something you can actually make in terms of your production skills. You will have to make what you tell me you're going to make. What I've seen before in this class is students will say they're going to make things like mobile apps. They'll get up to the paper prototypes, they'll get to the digital prototype, and they'll go, oh, wait a second, I don't know Objective-C. I don't know how to make a mobile app. If you took 211, then you know how to make one in InDesign, but if you didn't, then I don't know if you know how to make one. You have to figure out if you know how to make one. But I do expect these projects to be real projects that work. So if you say you're going to make a mobile app, you need to turn in a mobile app. If you say you're going to make a working website, you need to make a working website. So just keep that in mind this week as you think about the kind of thing you might make. And finally, we aren't going to review how to do every step of the process. You learn that in 375. So I'm going to rely on you to demonstrate that you've learned the process and the skills. You may want to revisit your notes in 375 from 375 throughout the course, because I'm relying on you to demonstrate what you've learned. So there will be times when you need to know what the process is, and I'm looking for whether or not you know what the next step should be. That's all I wanted to talk about in this video. I'm going to move on in the next video to the thesis paper.